Depiction of Marilyn Monroe, arguably one of the most iconic pictures of the 20th century. Where should we start this? 100 million, at 100 million, at 110 million, 110 million, 120.
Art is dead, and we are its murderers. All of a sudden, there's AI art, which I'm not going to say anything about, though the products are sometimes fascinating. Here's some that it made for me. There's some talk about simulated images like this and people wondering, what even is art anymore? Well, my take is that art's not anything. Not anymore. RIP. Art today is still a simulation of art, but that isn't because of AI. The end of art happened a long time ago. Now, the question is, did this guy do it? Is this the smoking gun? And to be honest, I don't have the death certificate of art, so I don't know the date that it took place. All I know is that it seemed to be alive at the beginning of the 20th century and dead at the end of it. And actually, a lot of society collapsed real quietly in the 20th century, but we never noticed, or maybe all the effects haven't arrived yet. Like when a star burns out and we keep seeing the light for a long time. So whether an idea, like the idea of art, is alive or dead, that's a metaphysical question. It's a question that philosophy deals with. But let's just say that the idea of art isn't the same thing as people making artworks. People still make art. I make art. I'm something of a painter. Here. Who knows? Maybe I could have been a real artist in a different age, but we'll never know because I was born after Andy Warhol died and took art with him. Now, Andy Warhol is not a very good artist, but he's for sure one of the most fascinating things that ever happened to art, right up there with R. Mutt. Warhol's so significant in his painting, I don't want to call it a painting. His image of Marilyn Monroe is on the cover of one of my art textbooks from back in the day. Now, what does this art textbook say about Warhol? His objects exist artistically by a nuance of contradiction between the actual product and its simulation, and the artist's fine calculation of his audience's different response to each. Deep. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really buy this. Let me tell you what everyone says about Warhol. The art itself, most everyone agrees, isn't good enough to stand on its own. It's too, there's nothing really there to get. So people make stuff up about it. The most exhausting part of putting this video together is that 90% of what is said about Warhol is just this fawning, obsequious sycophancy.
It just brings tears to your eyes. It's beautiful.
Like he was a genius, a puppet master.
This was the genius of our time.
A brilliant and unparalleled observer of the zeitgeist.
We are the culture of consumption. So he was so ahead of his time to understand that.
It's really nauseating if you're not part of the Warhol cult. And I'm saying, dude, he wrote books. We have his journal. I read both of them for this video, and I don't see much genius there. And you know who agrees with me? Him. If you want to know all about Andy Warhol, just look at the surface. There's nothing behind it. 1967. So he straight up says there's nothing here to see, and yet no one believes him. It's craziness. Here's another one. I finally got a BMW painted black with pink roll-on flowers. Maybe they'll read meaning into it. I hope so. He wrote this in his diary. Now, genius? That's a high bar to clear. I watched this Netflix series. That's where some of these clips are from. And it's basically 6 hours of people just stuffing, inventing deep meaning for this guy and his work.
And if you look at those icons, you really see a very strong relationship with Andy's art and this flat two-dimensional quality.
While never once second-guessing the mythology.
This was the genius of our time.
And that's really what this is. It's mythology. Incidentally, this touches on a core tenet of my philosophy, and that's that there are no real secrets left. And because there aren't, people feel compelled to make them up. You know, it's like, because God's dead, we have to invent California. So don't get me wrong here. Warhol's extremely significant in the PlasticPills universe, but genius? Okay, let me see if I can convince you. When normies look at art where there's nothing to get, there's usually two responses. Either A, there must be some deep, esoteric, hidden meaning going on that I'm missing. Or B, how's that art? My kid could do that. Usually when it comes to, you know, my kid could do that, it's in reference to stuff like this. Or this, abstract expressionism. But just so you know, take it from me, your kid couldn't do this. I mean, I understand why someone would say that, but if you see one of these up close in person and you know how to paint a little bit, you'd know actually how difficult this would be to pull off. And I'm not saying that difficulty equals good art. There's got to be something more to it than that. However, your kid could definitely make this. This is a 5-layer screen print, which means doing this. There you go, 5 pulls, $200 million.
No other painting that represents this diversity in emotions.
That's more expensive than the most expensive home sold in America that year. And that's not to say that Warhol had zero skill. Like, this one, at the very least, is an actual painting. It's not a very arduous painting. Look, you can see. It's one layer of paint on an otherwise blank canvas, and you can see the pencil lines here. So yeah, your kid probably couldn't do this, and for some, that's enough to make it real art. So now the other response. There must be some hidden meaning here that I don't get, that arty people do, because this fucking thing is worth $10 million, despite the fact that any moderately trained painter could do this exact thing in a few hours. I'm serious about this too. I will prove it to you right here. By the way, red paint is really expensive, so I hope you appreciate my little stunt. All right, while that's going, I want to show you the unintended comedic genius of this article. It gives 32 reasons for why these cans are in fact the work of a genius, because the author is very butthurt that not many people went to the MoMA show. Among these 32 reasons, there are banger claims like this. Spend any serious time looking at these 32 canvases, and you'll realize that they were laboriously painted by hand, no doubt over many weeks. They are an entirely and explicitly artisanal simulation of mass production, not some kind of bastard child of it. The tension between hand and mass production is part of their meaning and charm. Come on, dude. If that's the meaning and charm, just for comparison, how long do you think this took? This guy did fewer paintings in his entire life than Warhol had in any one show. I started this before lunch and was done by dinner. Now again, there's more to the idea of art than just how long it took. But you can't say with a straight face that the meaning here has anything to do with laboriousness in the history of art. But oh, he's not done. Next is this. It's absolutely my favorite paranoiac claim that this author makes. The actual tomato soup painting has several random little splashes of red paint on its background. Let's find what he's talking about. Okay, here, right? Continuing. Was Warhol trying to signal that it had started a life in a classic artist's studio where all kinds of splashy accidents happen, not in a printing plant where product labels are born? Look, you can call me a Philistine, but I'm just gonna go with no. These are what we in the industry call accidental paint drips, not a special signal. Like, what about the pencil lines that he didn't bother cleaning up? Are they symbols of Warhol's faith in the Catholic doctrine of original sin, that we are all works in progress, striving for completion? Yeah, anyone can do this. His article goes on to speculate wildly that Warhol had Italian portraiture or Johann Sebastian Bach's Goldberg variations in mind when he painted these, you know, just anything to pretend that there are esoteric secrets here that only true Andy Warhol cult members are clever enough to uncover. And to be fair, maybe it's not an unreasonable response for a normie to hold out the possibility that this does secretly mean something, because the arty people, the industry insiders, they do want you to believe that art has secret powers, not least because it's worth way more that way and art critics can have jobs. Still, I think it's imperative to note that every fawning commentator on a Warhol piece agrees that the work doesn't stand on its own merit. And how do I know this? Well, it's evinced by the fact that they're always trying to forcefully just shove meaning into them to add context and insert some Gnostic justification for why these pieces are actually worth their hype. Personally, I just read this as denial, and like, it's bordering on sacrilege these days to say that Warhol's art's just mid. But come on, everyone knows it is. The public knows, the critics know, but there's this, you know, sacred agreement between art, popularity, and money. And it's the art industry that's pushing this idea that Warhol's some sort of genius instead of an emperor that's not wearing any pants. Since you're here, I can go a little further into this. Here are the reasons that Warhol priests give for why this is the work of a genius. Number one, it's a commentary on consumer capitalism.
The answer really is that the paintings are comment and commentary about the kind of world in which we live.
And this is the most common one, except I'm like, what commentary? Doesn't the commentary need a comment? No one really says what the comment is, except that it's something from outside an art gallery that's now inside an art gallery.
Warhol understood the value of things like Campbell's soup and all of these American products that, you know, you become American by participating, and we are the culture of consumption. So he was so ahead of his time to understand that.
And that may be clever, but as a commentary, it's been done. It was done a long time ago. So then number two reason, this art looks meaningless, but it's actually inexplicably profound. This interpretation usually depends on assorting little facts from Andy Warhol's childhood or life and making the case that these little facts are actually keys to the vault of his very deep and powerful art. Like, the soup cans recalled his childhood in Carnegie-powered plaid-mad Pittsburgh, or that this is extremely powerful Catholic imagery.
Some of that work was really incredibly powerful, especially the work that kind of returned to Catholic imagery.
This can't all be serious. It just can't. Like, they can't gaslight like this. This is a screen print, but powerful? Really? Or is this the powerful Catholic imagery? We got a cartoon Jesus with logos from his other paintings printed over top. Probably because they were just screens that were still laying around in the studio. But no, listen to this voiceover with a romantic piano backtrack saying how powerful this is.
He made the most incredible, gigantic painting, changing completely also the Last Supper.
Jesus Christ. So this is a photographic screen print of a piece that is universally agreed is a real piece of art, you know? But the guy who did this screen print said, and I quote, "The most beautiful thing in Florence is McDonald's." These guys aren't done. Wait till the art dealers start doing psychoanalysis.
The late self-portraits is part of the whole identity issue with Andy, that the real Andy is camouflaged. Very, very meaningful works.
The real Andy Warhol is camouflaged. It's so deep.
And juxtapose the two of them. I mean, he has a vision. I don't know who is the expert who can really explain.
I don't know who the expert is who could explain this. It's too profound to understand. This. I think you could give a crack at this interpretation to any random 14-year-old, and I'd say the chances are pretty good. This is what they're getting weepy over. Like, we have to figure, why does this happen? I'm open to suggestions. How do they say this with a straight face? This is one of those moments when I'm forced to wonder, am I insane or is it everyone else?
It's breathtaking, actually, because he makes the simplest things look magical. Like a soup can just blow your mind.
I have eyes, they have eyes, and this blows your mind? Sorry, my mistake. This one shouldn't blow your mind because I made this one 2 days ago in 4 hours. No. This is the one that's mind-blowing. The one with the secret paint drips. Oh my God. Okay, last is number 3. Warhol is a mass media genius because he himself or his personality was the artwork all along.
Your success as an artist, probably the best known in the world at the moment, is as a result of your own personal image, yourself as a work of art.
Now, in my mind, this one is the most plausible. But again, if it's true, it doesn't say anything about his art. In fact, it's more reason to say that this is the reason that his art just isn't very good. Sorry, wrong image. This is the good one. We could go on like this, but let's just say, first, you can't say anything about the form of the art because, it just isn't very good. And you can't say anything about the content of the art because it's uninterpretably superficial, which he was fine with. It's no one else that seems to be able to accept this. I really believe in empty spaces, although as an artist, I make a lot of junk. Empty space is never wasted space. Wasted space is any space that has art in it. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I'm ignorant. I do think there are cases to be made for artistic genius, the invention of linear perspective, for example. And then after artistic genius, then there's a lot of groundbreaking cleverness that really changes the idea of art. For example, the guy who put the toilet in the art gallery, but that guy did it 5 decades before Warhol, and he also painted this, which, if nothing else, is painting on hard difficulty level, okay? Hardest, hard, easy. But still, at the time, this really changed, the idea of art. Compare that to this. And finally, some honesty around here. And he does get honest. Business art is the step that comes after art. After I did the thing called art, or whatever it's called, I went into business art. During the hippie era, people put down the idea of business. They'd say money is bad and working is bad. But making money is art and working is art. And good business is the best art. He tells you straight up, whatever the idea of art is supposed to be, he doesn't give a shit. So whatever art was, that's dead now. Now it's business. That I can respect. Now I'm gonna try something here. It's a bit of a show, don't tell kind of thing. All right, we'll see. We'll see if this works. I'm trying to do an art. There's this massive commentary industry that has come into existence simply to give Warhol's art meaning.
No one's more famous in the 20th century than Andy Warhol.
Like 60 years of an idiotic commentary mill sinking their time and effort into making up the reasons that Warhol was wrong about what he said he was doing.
This was the heyday of Studio 54. And that's Andy, and he's naked behind this.
Holding it up like that?
Uh-huh. And then me.
I want to take a picture of that for Throwback Thursday.
And there's a partial explanation in the story of this guy. It won't explain everything, maybe, but it'll probably get us halfway there. This is Jose Mugrabi, an Israeli textile billionaire. Well, he owns over 800 Warhols, and every time one comes up for sale, he uses his money to drive up the auction price. So he's had, maybe not single-handedly, but pretty close to responsible for the so far limitless inflation of the price of Warhol works. And aside from drugs, art is the largest unregulated market in the world. Conspiracy time. There was this award-winning documentary called The Mona Lisa Curse. In 2008, it came out, and it featured prominently the Mugrabi family and some other professional art collectors. And it was criticizing their control over the art industry and Warhol in particular. Now, this doc was big time. I watched it when it came out, and it won an Emmy.
The winner, the Mona Lisa Curse.
And yet, for some reason, it has been mysteriously, absolutely annihilated from the internet and every streaming service. Now, I heard whispers of a lawsuit, and I heard that some powerful people wanted this doc eliminated, and it's been eliminated, pretty much.
Somebody told me that your father had something like 800 Warhols. Is that true?
Hello, I'm here, sorry, in post. Sorry for the interruption. I uploaded this video, finished it, using this clip from a buried documentary that they tried to scrub from the internet. And I think you can probably guess what happened. Boom. I appealed that it was fair use, educational, transformative. So now here I'm being extra transformative. This is a conversation between a Mugrabi failson and legendary art critic Robert Hughes. And he asks, I'm sorry for this. I'm going to have to unleash my theater kid energy because I really need this clip. He asks, someone told me that your father owned something like 800 Warhols. Is that true? Yes, that's true. What is your opinion of Warhol? I think that he's probably one of the most
visionary artist of our time.
You know the way he answers that? Like the inflection at the end makes it sound like a question. This is something he's not very confident in, despite the fact that his entire privileged social status depends entirely on the answer to this question. And he's not really sure about it. And he shouldn't be. Anyway, I'm going to come back to these later. But so, yeah, stay tuned to the channel. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the rest of the video. Run the original cut. Where is it? Who didn't want this scene? There is an actual conspiracy here. Anyway, the Mugrabi family owns a ton of Warhols and continues to inflate them at auction. Art is a racket for them, and not just them. There's a lot of people who like to park their money in art. And a lot of that art just sits in storage containers in airports. These are called free ports, where they accrue value, and meanwhile, the owners don't have to pay any tax on them as assets. And that's what a lot of the art industry is today, and part of the reason why it's ended. So the idea of art's dead when society at large no longer has any need of it or no longer sees any value of it. This inflated value business is not the whole story, though. I think there might be a little more to it. Warhol's art, I think it's fair to say, means nothing. However, Warhol's status as an artist does not mean nothing. Far from it. Really, when you ask what art is, like, is this art? Is this art? Is this art? Why? And why not? In each case, you're not really asking or answering a question about a thing. You're answering or asking a question about the idea of the thing. So whether or not this is art, or this depends on whether you believe it approaches an idea. No surprise that idealists think that ideas are very important. There's also a lot of skeptics as to whether ideas are anything more than fantasies we made up. Still, even the skeptics acknowledge that whether or not they exist, ideas are something that pretty much everyone gives faith to. The idea of love, or the idea of politics, or the idea of art. Ideas have some special value that goes beyond the mere instances of love, politics, art. Now, totally independent of ideas, art's gonna keep getting made, as it always has been made. But at some time in the process of art getting made, it also produced an idea, which is to say that art has a purpose in history or a special value to society, that art matters for something. I can't exactly say when this idea appears distinctly, the idea that art is not subservient to some other use. This includes art, or what we call art, that is used to teach religious stories or used as a tool in a ritual. In those cases, it doesn't have its own value. But art gets its own value relatively recently. And back when the idea of art was still alive, there were heated debates about what art was, what's it for, why does it matter, if art should be done for its own sake, or whether it should be done for political reasons. You still hear from these sycophants that Andy Warhol kept quiet about all this because he was so wise, that he was an observer of culture.
He, as usual, refused to give a direct answer, but
I'm going to go, though, with the less entertained possibility that Andy Warhol kept quiet because he had nothing to say.
Did you know him?
No, I never met Andy Warhol.
I used to.
Sorry, just being transformative here. Wait for this dunk.
I thought he was one of the stupidest people I'd ever met in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because he had nothing to say.
And further, that art has nothing left to say. Now, you can only have heated debate and disagreement over whether and why something matters only if it's still alive, which is why the question about art's purpose don't mean anything anymore, at least since Warhol. There's a common denominator for all the people I have mentioned that want to give Warhol's art meaning. They're desperate to shove some meaning back into these bleak, repetitive canvases. They mean something as a commentary on consumerism, the idea of art as critique. They mean something because they were deeply personal to him, art as expression. Or they mean something because they are creative and just look interesting, art as aesthetics. Conversely, what I'm saying about Warhol's art is what he says about his art. It's the surface, there's nothing hidden, it's not the profound expression of something else, and it doesn't hide some secret. Going on hanging stuff in galleries simulates the old world, the old art world that believed in art's secret power. But now, everywhere, the honest among us have come to Warhol's conclusion that art is business. Now, Jean Baudrillard said this best, I think, when he says, Warhol's images are banal, not because they might be said to be the reflection of a banal world, but because they are products of the absence of any interpretive pretension on the part of the subject. Which is to say, there's no secrets here. There's nothing to see here. And contrary to some of my tone here, I really admire Warhol for that, for refusing the idea of art, to stand there as a bookend to the idea that art has some special social purpose. He wrote this: "Some critic called me the nothingness himself, and that didn't help my sense of existence any. Then I realized that existence itself is nothing, and I felt better. But I'm still obsessed with the idea of looking into the mirror and seeing no one, nothing." The end of history means that the secrets have disappeared, and priests of every stripe want to maintain secrets to keep faith in secrets alive, because that's where priests get status from. The art industry is full of such priests, and most industries are. University, philosophy, politics. Now we're gonna keep on doing ideas, I guess, but they're now just the simulations of a time when we actually believed in them enough to debate them. Oof! So even if we still put paint on canvases, hang them on the white walls of galleries, no one really believes there's a profound purpose to this process. Our age is the kind of age in which the idea of having an age at all is disappearing, thank God. And you can look at the end of art as a sign of that already having happened. So what now? There's some writers that really understand this vibe. Here's Baudrillard again. "Perhaps the only strategy to adopt towards value when you no longer believe in it is to come back on the offensive against those who claim to represent it, to expose their secret indifference to value. Value exists, but I don't believe it. Like Andy Warhol for art, like the agnostics for God. It's useless to add belief to all that. And he's on point, as always. All right, thanks for making it this far. There's more to say. This is my way of making sense of the world, and if you're interested in my other material or method, as always, check out patreon.com, where you can join the channel page for free and see what kind of content is coming out every week. And of course, if you pay a couple bucks to support the channel, you get lectures, readings, and deeper dives into a variety of topics, mostly history of ideas stuff. It's just business. I do want to thank these people for deciding that my compositions are interesting enough to keep watching and for other people to see too. It's a lot of the stuff I wanted to study in university, but you know, the university, kind of like the art world, is not ready to give up on the idea itself long after it's dead. But what if it's everyone else who's crazy?